I would attribute the fact that I have become a musician to my parents, for sure. They're both musicians. Until recently, they both taught beginning band for the public schools and played in our church, played in community bands, did little chamber music things, played weddings, so they were really involved in music. And I'm the oldest, and so I think they kind of could tell that I had an ear at an early age and started me out pretty early when I was 6 on Suzuki violin. And yeah, so I would definitely give them all the credit. I did Suzuki. I started on violin, didn't stay with violin for very long. I switched to cello after a couple months. But I stuck with a primarily Suzuki teacher until I think I was 14 or so. And then we started driving about an hour both ways for me to study with someone who played in the local symphony. And then when I was 16, I left and went to the Interlochen Arts Academy. They do have a summer program, that's the camp. The academy is a year-round boarding school, basically, for all the arts, dance, writing, visual arts, theater, and music. And so it was just very intense private lessons, chamber music, the orchestra, met every day. And so it was a way for me to, in where I'm from in Owensboro, I was very much a big fish in a small pond. And so it was very eye-opening, and to be around other kids my age that were a lot better than me. But it's also very inspiring, and it gets you to set your bar higher, Then after Interlochen, I went to Rice University in Houston, did both my undergrad and my master's there with Lynn Harrell. And after I graduated, pretty soon after I graduated, I went and played in the Charlotte Symphony in North Carolina for several years, and then I came here. For Charlotte, yes, for Charlotte, the entire audition was screened. And so some places like here in Atlanta, the first rounds are screened, but then when it comes to the final few that they have picked, they want to interact a little bit more with you. But in Charlotte, the whole thing was screened, completely anonymous. I didn't know a soul in that orchestra. But it was a really fantastic first job, definitely a great first job. I was assistant principal there, so I got some time up on the front stand and some experience with leading certain shows. And so, yeah, when I took this audition here, I really wasn't thinking about leaving Charlotte. I was perfectly happy there, and then this worked out, and so you just got to go with it. A step up from Atlanta would be Chicago, Boston, New York, LA, San Francisco, Pittsburgh, the National Symphony in DC. And things fluctuate, and a lot has to do with cost of living, if you're close to family, the quality of your life, other things that you have going on. I love it here. I would be totally happy to stay here also, but I'm still taking auditions, and because it's good for me on my own personal playing. It's good to keep me in shape. And then, like before, you never know if something works out. One of my favorite guest conductors that we've had here in Atlanta was Jaap van Zweden, music director in Dallas. He was very demanding of the orchestra. We did Beethoven 7, I think, and so it was tough the first rehearsal or two because he was really, really hard on us. But it was one of the best performances of that symphony I've ever had. He's a violinist, so he knew exactly what he wanted from the string section, got us to play so together. And, it's always good, but this was like that extra 10%, and it was phenomenal. We're lucky to have a lot of great guest conductors come through here. We're lucky to have Robert and Donald, and it's, to have such a great team here, but it's nice that we have the reputation that we can get other awesome people. It's funny, the difference with opera conductors, that you would think, okay, just working with an orchestra, there's no singers, that you wouldn't really notice, but there's definitely a different style. Well, for instance, it's really just in rehearsal, but their opera conductors are very much, I've learned, about long lines, very long lines, everything's very long. And then, for instance, usually we don't rehearse the concerto until the soloist gets here, unless it's a really either unfamiliar or difficult piece for the orchestra. But we ran through the Saint-Saëns piano, the Egyptian piano concerto, and he was just singing the part while we were just like reading it, and we're all just like, why don't we just wait until the soloist gets here? But apparently that's, I mean, opera, you know, they do the run through, and they'll, you know, anyway, it's just a different way, and we weren't used to it. But I like a lot of little things that composers write, but I guess a favorite composer would mean that you like everything that they've written. It's kind of what I've started to take that to mean. For me, that would be Brahms. A lot of people say Mahler, and I love Mahler, and it's fantastic, but I can't say that I would put Mahler on all the time, like listening to it. I could have Brahms going all day long. Symphonies, sonatas, the Requiem. Yeah, John Adams is also one that I've really taken to more recently. That's a fascinating question. I want to say yes. It's inherent. I know different cultures have different styles of music. You know, you're not going to find, you know, a tribe in Africa listening to, you know, symphonic recordings or anything. They have different ways, but I think just the fact that every culture has some form of music. Some use it to communicate, some use it just for entertainment. But to me, that says that it is something inherent, because it's not something that you need to be taught, really, to use to express yourself or to pass the time or to help access emotion. I mean, yeah, I feel like it is something that it just transcends everything. And if you could all of a sudden regain your hearing, and I think it would mean even more. It'd probably be more powerful to you than those of us that are kind of used to it. I really love playing in an orchestra. Chamber music is fantastic. I have been playing with the Peachtree String Quartet. This is our second season, and that's been really good for me because I never really sunk my teeth into the quartet repertoire when I was in school. My chamber groups were always a little different or larger or something. You know, I would kind of push the boundaries a little bit. But it's been really good for my playing and for me musically to really learn some of these quartets and learn them well and perform them well. But there's just something about the power of an orchestra, the different layers in an orchestra. It's just like infinite possibilities of color and of sound, and so that for me is really what does it for me. But you have to, as an orchestral musician, you have to be playing other things outside, because otherwise it's, you know, you can let yourself go a little bit, especially as a section player, because we would never be heard by ourselves normally. So I think it's for me anyway, to keep myself musically inspired, it's important to do other things outside it, other different solo projects, chamber music projects, play with different colleagues. But I love playing in an orchestra. It's very true, and in a quartet, and it depends on the repertoire, because in Haydn or Mozart, the first violin is always playing the melody, and the other three are the backups. You know, when you get into later stuff, 20th century stuff, it's very much more, you know, it's more spread out. The different responsibilities are shared. But I think second violin and viola are really, they have crucial roles in a quartet, really, to be the bridge and to connect. And sometimes it's easy for the top or the bottom, the first violin or the cello, to kind of not really fit into what they're doing, because you feel like, well, everyone should come to me, you know, or something. But it's really important for all four voices to be super aware, hypersensitive to what everyone else is doing. Well, when we played the piece by Esa-Pekka Salonen, the Nix, when we took that to Carnegie, but Nix was really difficult, and we had to work on it a lot. We had a lot of rehearsals on that way in advance, because it was a new piece, it was unfamiliar, but it was really difficult. But I'm a big fan of new music and modern music, and So for me, I really get a kick out of figuring that stuff out. It's almost like a really complex jigsaw puzzle, fitting how all the parts go together rhythmically. And Robert is a great conductor to have for pieces like that. So that, I think, was one of the more challenging things we did here. We played an Elgar Symphony, Elgar 1, that was surprisingly difficult. And then coming up here in January, we're doing the Vaughan Williams Symphony No. 4, I think. And we looked at that during our boot camp week before the season started, because that's something it'll be tricky too. The parts are just really complicated. They're also pretty unfamiliar. Like there's some hard stuff in Mahler 5, but for whatever reason, everyone has played it, or you learn it in rep class, or whatever. And so just to have had a look at it once or twice really makes a difference. One really hard piece is The Sorcerer's Apprentice. And we play it all the time on Halloween shows or, youth concerts or whatever, because it's so popular, but it's really hard. So I've always been really thankful, because in school we would have weekly group lessons on excerpts. Someone from the symphony would come and coach us on excerpts. And one of the pieces we learned was The Sorcerer's Apprentice. And at the time I was like, why are we doing this? This isn't on auditions. It's not, a big warhorse of a piece, but it's because usually you have 0 rehearsal time to put it together, and it's going to be really last minute, and it's really hard. So I've always been grateful that I was forced to learn it early on, and so it's still kind of there when we come back to it. Another composer that's consistently difficult is Strauss. Don Juan, Till Eulenspiegel, also Sprach, Death and any of his tone poems are really difficult, but so rewarding and exciting to play. My opinion on the whole aging audience problem is, for starters, people have been saying that for decades. You can find articles from like the 50s lamenting, the vanishing of the classical music audience. And I think, for starters, it's an art form that just, I think, tends to appeal more to people later in life for various reasons. It's not super cheap to come a lot of time, unless you get student tickets or rush tickets. So you would need to have disposable income. You need to have the time to make it a regular thing. And also, to be honest, I feel like with technology and other music the way it is, people don't have the attention span to sit for long enough to really appreciate and understand even a 10-minute movement of something. So at least, when they're younger, you're used to things going immediately, you're used to multitasking, and so, it would be hard to just sit and be still and listen. I think it's funny, it's like, who says that younger is better all the time also? Like, I don't see rock bands or Britney Spears or, someone else, all afraid that they don't have senior citizens in their audience. It's like different things have different crowds. And that's not to say that younger people don't and can't enjoy the symphony, because we do have plenty of, not graying people that are coming. More so now than I think there used to be, because the more we can get out in schools and interact with these kids, whether or not they come that next week to a concert, but later on, if we can somehow leave an impression with them that this is something they enjoy and have a connection to the people on stage, then, that's one of our jobs. There's been talk about that, and some orchestras have done that already, having a tweet section, and that they will receive tweets from someone in the orchestra or like someone backstage saying, listen for this. I guess it's cool, and I'm always open to trying new things and incorporating, what's hip right now. Does it make me very hip that I said hip? I personally would find it distracting, because I wouldn't want someone next to me on their phone, receiving these things or reacting to different messages they get. But I guess I would rather people, there be something online or some sort of interactive thing that people can learn about the piece before they come. And so then when they come, they can listen and they know what to expect. And I guess program notes do that to a certain extent, but it's not in real time like a Twitter thing would be. Or if we could have some sort of camera crew set up that you can get close-ups of whoever has a solo, or the section that has the melody, that you can still be watching the concert but know who to really focus on. We are actually in the cello section, we rotate. So the first three people, Chris, Danny, and Karen, have fixed titled chairs, and then the rest of us will rotate based on a system that our personnel manager, Russell, has kind of developed to make sure that everyone has an equal, that it's all balanced. People sit with a different person the same amount of times. People are in the front or in the back the same amount of times to try and keep it fair. Our personnel manager determine the seating for the whole season, and a few weeks out post it backstage or on our online, and so that we know where we're sitting and what part we need to practice. I like it. I've always been a fan. Even in quartets, I like having the cellos on the inside. I feel like the blend is better. It's a space thing also. Like, because violas, when they're sitting, if they get into it, they go this way. And if we're on this side, it's, then and our bow's going this way, it can sometimes be a problem for just, space-wise. But I feel like, because we tried it both ways when the new shell was installed, and we had a session to kind of experiment with different setups and see, and it seems to really blend in our hall better, rather than going, treble to bass, and to have it mixed a little bit more. And I know Donald a lot of the time has first violins and second violins opposite each other, violas and cellos switched even more. Right. But I like it. I like sitting where we're sitting. The trombones are louder though. Something a lot of us have been pushing for is to get risers. A more permanent riser system, because I think that would help visually for the audience, visually for us, and sound-wise to have more, more coming out. I always kind of joke a little bit, but it's totally true, that I need friends outside of the orchestra, because it's hard, because they're great people and we spend a lot of time together, but then it's hard to not talk about work, but when you spend, I think when you're doing what you're doing on stage is such a personal thing, and you take so much pride in it, and we're all in it together. It's not like it's 80 people in different cubicles working individually on, we all have to be so in tune, and then we spend time together on tours or in between rehearsals on lunch break or whatever. So both in Charlotte and here, I've developed some really close friendships with the people I work with, so it's nice. Since I've been here, when I started in January of 2011, there were 4 other people that started when I did. So that was a lot to have 5 new hires all at once, because auditions usually just kind of go maybe a couple a year, but people start at different times or whatever. But the last couple of years, there has been a lot of turnover, both from people retiring and from people winning other jobs. Like, we've had 3 principal trumpets in the last 3 years, because Tom Hooten left and went to LA, and we had Dave Vonderheide here last year for a year, and now Stuart Stevenson, who has started the tenor track for that job. And so it's great to have new people and new energy and fresh blood, but it's also, you really realize how important consistency is, especially in these crucial positions. Because just switching out one person can totally change the feel and the vibe and the sound of a section, a brass section, the trumpet section specifically. So a lot of times when the statement is made that, oh, well, there are thousands of students graduating from conservatories every year, we can just pick a bunch it really doesn't work like that. And for an orchestra to really have it sound and to really be on top of its game, it has to be with people that have played together for years, that really can read each other and can feel each other. With the conductor too, you have to create relationships with these people for it to sound as good as people are used to hearing the Atlanta Symphony. So I feel like that's something that people don't understand, that to make another sports analogy, like, the Yankees, I think, have the highest payroll in Major League Baseball, all these superstars, but they're not always winning the World Series, and they're not always the best team. So you can't just take a bunch of great players and throw them on and expect the chemistry to be right. So there's a lot more that goes into it. I do, and because I've been listening to our latest Sibelius CD in my car, and it really, I think we do have a sound, and I can't put it into words, but I think New York has a sound, and I think Cleveland has a sound, and Atlanta has a sound, and Baltimore has a sound, because it's individuals on the stage. And you've been talking about Pittsburgh, like the Pittsburgh brass section is just like, whoa, it's like it'll blow your socks off. The hall can affect an orchestra's sound.
Right.
If someone has a really big boomy hall or a dry hall, so. I think we do, but I haven't figured out how to put it into words yet. I don't think anyone expected it to make as much of a difference as it has. Now, like our softs can be so much softer because it goes on its own.
Right.
Whereas before, it's like we would, mezzo forte at least, and we've had to get used to that. Not playing as loud as we can all the time, and it's been really nice. So I'm glad it's made a difference both on the stage and out in the hall. There was acoustical testing. A lot was done over the summer when we weren't here, and it was a construction site, so we couldn't even come in to the hall to see what was going on. But the acousticians that were involved did a lot of testing. And we were brought in at the very end of that once they had the basics figured out. And then, like I said, we tried different seating arrangements. We tried, because if the chorus is there, the back, it goes all the way to the back of the hall. You can hardly even walk behind the shell to get to the other side of the stage. So then we tried leaving it like that, to see if that gap affected anything. Because it's a pain to move. If stage crew had to be going back and forth every day, it would, So they were trying to figure that out. One cool thing they did it without us there, but then they also wanted to try it with everyone on the stage. They put this big, like, circular speaker, and they do these, like, really loud pings almost. It's almost like a sonar or something to measure, the reaction time or whatever. So it's really been cool to see them work. And, I guess maybe some people, like wine connoisseurs, your palate is different. Like they can hear differently, or they've been able to train their ear to really listen to the space. So it's cool. I remember when before they put it in and they were testing the old shell, and you probably heard this, but they said that the worst spot on stage is right where Christina Smith sits. Like principal flute is the deadest spot. And she was just like, great. Like, I knew it wasn't me this whole time. And so to be able to like pinpoint that, I think is really fascinating. Oh yes, definitely. Everybody does. You can't only play your instrument when you show up at the hall.
How much would you say you practice in a week?
It depends. If I'm gearing up for an audition, I would try to get 4 to 5 hours a day to really, when I'm that focused. Other times it's not that much, or if I have 6 hours of rehearsal one day, I can't go home and practice for 4 hours. There's a limit to what these muscles can handle. So you really have to balance it. But I'm playing when I'm teaching, I'm playing when I'm playing at a church or in rehearsal. The element of pacing yourself is something I learned at an audition actually for the Rochester Philharmonic in New York, because I warmed up and I played my first round and it went well and I advanced, and then the second round wasn't until a couple hours later, but I just played until that next round because I was like, oh well, I don't want to like lose this, I don't want to get cold or whatever. And then when I got to the second round, I was just shot. Like there was nothing. I was falling all over the place. So that was a big lesson to learn, was how much you can handle when you really have to be sounding your best all the time. And there's mental practice, and you can do listening to learn, study your parts too. It's not always involving the instrument. But I listen to a pretty wide variety of things. Being from Kentucky, I'm a big bluegrass fan. I actually, I should stop telling people this, but I got a banjo for my birthday last year, so I've, really into that stuff. Punch Brothers, some old school stuff, Bill Monroe and, Jim Mills. I also just, a lot of the time when I'm around the house, just put on kind of some pop. Just really upbeat things. I like music that makes me happy. I have 2 playlists on my phone from Spotify, and I have like the starred list, and that's all stuff that'll just like get me pumped and get me excited and in a good mood. And then I have my chill list, which is, when I'm feeling more meditative or, somber or just want to kind of be overwhelmed. And it's goes back to what you said earlier about, is music intrinsically tied to our emotions? And for me, it's really, it's like those 2 categories. I want to be happy and pumped and excited, get some Bruckner or get some, Beyonce or something, and then have the Thomas Tallis or have the slow movement of, a Shostakovich piano concerto. That's one of my favorites, and some more choral type things. So I really don't limit myself to one thing, and I rarely go on a stint where I binge listen to one thing at a time. So.